In Twilight Struggle, Voice of America is yet another powerful event for the US player to look forward to in the mid-war. But how can they use it most effectively? And how does the USSR deal with it? We will take a look at that today, here on Legendary Tactics. The mid-war comes as a welcome relief to the US player, as they get great events like Voice of America to wreak havoc on the Soviet position that otherwise seems entrenched. But one has to be careful not to waste this powerful event effect. And that's not even mentioning the Soviets and what they will have to do in order to work around this one. Let's take a closer look. First of all, the card itself. Voice of America is a 2-op mid-war US event card. Triggering the event allows the US player to remove up to 4 USSR influence from any non-European countries, no more than 2 influence per country. So, as the Soviets, how does one best deal with this card? Well, somewhat obviously, this is a card that you will want to prioritize for the space race. Because of the extensive damage that this card can do, unfortunately playing it really isn't a choice. And Voice of America isn't even a start event, so you can't even play it once to get it out of the game. This is as close to an unplayable event as you can get. Even with the Brezhnev Doctrine in effect, there aren't enough ops available to mitigate the damage, and in the worst case, you can lose access to a region of the board. You may be forced to play it at some point though, either because the space race has advanced to where spacing cards requires 3 operations points, or if you are under Red Scare/Purge, for example, and can't hold it over to next turn. So if you have to play it, the best thing to do is to plan ahead. If you see any vulnerable regions, shore them up. Make sure there is at least 5 influence there, or at least 3 influence in the key countries. For example, don't count on holding Brazil and Venezuela with just 2 influence each, or holding on to African battlegrounds with a single influence each. You have to plan ahead, look for vulnerable areas, and do what you can to reinforce them. For the US, Voice of America is an amazing event, arguably one of the best American events in the game, a voice of hope that the game will soon turn in your favor. And this is compounded by the fact that it isn't starred and doesn't leave the game, leaving it a prime event for you to bring back via SALT negotiations or the Star Wars events. The absolute best use of this event card is as your last play of the game. If you can play it on action round 7 of turn 10, after which no Soviet response is possible, it can lead to big victory point swings, often by 10 or more. Pick the most vulnerable regions to remove Soviet domination or control, or maybe even presence in some cases. This might lead to a mathy final moment in the game, as you add up all the victory point differences of different potential moves, so your opponent might have to be patient just before they lose the game to you. Take your time. Let the Soviets stew a bit. It is worth holding on to the Voice of America for a while in order to pull off this powerful play. There is some risk, though, to losing the card to late war events like Aldrich Ames Remix or the terrorism event, so keep this in mind. Play Voice of America as soon as you can if you are concerned, and if you don't know where these events currently are. Better to have a less effective event than no event at all. The next best use of the card is to remove Soviet access to a region, often by removing all of their influence there. Sometimes the targets for Voice of America are obvious, and other times you'll have to set it up with some coups or realignments in advance. But that is the second best way to get the most out of this event. And the other best use of Voice of America is to threaten the loss of Soviet control in at least 2 important countries. Cause havoc by threatening to flip multiple countries and force the USSR to choose between them. As such, Voice of America is a great card to play on the last action round of your turn, forcing the Soviets to respond and likely giving you the first action round battleground country coup, among other opportunities. Make sure you hit the Soviet where it hurts the most. So for the USSR player, this card is pretty much unplayable. Send it to the space race every time, and if you have to play it, mitigate it by shoring up your vulnerable countries ahead of time. And for the American player, this card is great. Try and use it in the last action round of the game, or to remove Soviet influence entirely from a region. If this card is well played, and especially if it turns up more than once, it can decide the game in your favor. Use it wisely. This has been our analysis of the Voice of America card in Twilight Struggle. We hope you got some value out of this video, and if you did, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. This is NATO with Legendary Tactics.